Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived an elderly woman named Amma. She was very old, with silver hair and a face full of wrinkles, but her eyes shone with warmth and kindness. Everyone in the village adored her because she always radiated happiness, even when life was difficult. Amma lived alone in a cozy little house near a grand banyan tree. Her husband had passed away many years ago, and she had no children to care for her, yet she never complained. Every morning, she would sit under the banyan tree, smiling at everyone who passed by. The villagers loved speaking with her because her words were always gentle and comforting, like a soft blanket on a cold night. The people of the village worked hard to earn a living. Some were farmers tending to their fields, some were carpenters crafting furniture, while others sold fruits, vegetables, and clothing at the market. But life was not always easy. There were times when the rains failed to come, leaving the crops to wither. Other times, sickness would spread, making it impossible for people to work. Many villagers lived with constant worry, yet Amma's smile never faded. One day, a young woman named Mira came to visit Amma. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "Amma, I don't know what to do," she cried. "My husband has gone to the city to find work, but he hasn't sent any money. My children are hungry, and I'm so afraid. What if something terrible has happened?" Amma looked at Mira with gentle eyes and smiled softly. "Sit down, my child," she said, patting the ground beside her. "Tell me, what do you think will happen?" Mira wiped her tears with the edge of her sari and replied, "I don't know, Amma. I feel like everything is going wrong. What if my husband can't find work? What if he forgets about us? What if we have nothing left to eat?" Amma listened patiently, then shook her head gently. "Mira, when we fill our minds with fearful thoughts, our hearts grow heavy, and everything seems worse. But when we choose to think good thoughts, our hearts become lighter, and sometimes, good things begin to happen." Mira looked at her doubtfully. "But how can I think good thoughts when everything around me feels so hopeless?" Amma smiled. "Let me tell you a story," she began. "Once, there was a poor man who had nothing, no food, no money, no family. He sat by the river, crying bitterly. An old woman passing by saw him and stopped. 'Why are you crying, my son?' she asked. The man sighed. 'I have nothing. How can I ever be happy?' The old woman smiled and said, 'You have the river, which flows endlessly. You have the trees, which give shade and fruit. You have the sun, which warms you every day. Look around you, there is beauty and life everywhere. If you only think about what you don't have, you will always be sad. But if you think about what you do have, you will find peace.'" The man listened carefully. He stopped crying and began to notice the river, the trees, and the bright sun. Slowly, he started to feel better. From that day, he worked hard and his life began to change. Amma looked at Mira and said, "Do you see, my dear? The man's life didn't change because of magic. It changed because he changed the way he thought. When we think positively, we find the strength to face our problems. But when we focus only on what's wrong, we feel weak and hopeless." Mira thought for a moment and then asked, "Will my thoughts really make a difference?" Amma nodded. "Yes, my child. If you wake up every morning and say to yourself, 'Today will be a good day,' you will find the strength to care for your children and face whatever comes your way. But if you keep thinking about what might go wrong, you will feel helpless and sad." Mira wiped her tears and nodded slowly. "I understand, Amma. I will try to think good thoughts from now on." Amma smiled warmly. "That is the first step, my dear." From that day forward, Mira followed Amma's advice. Every morning, she told herself, "Today will be a good day." She worked hard, cared for her children, and waited for her husband with hope in her heart. A few weeks later, she received a letter from her husband. He had found a job in the city and was sending money back home. Mira's eyes filled with tears of joy. She ran to Amma's house to share the news. Amma smiled and said, "You see, my dear, when we think positively, we invite good things into our lives. Problems will always come, but if we face them with a hopeful heart, we can overcome them." Soon, Amma's wisdom spread across the village. Many people came to her to share their troubles, and she always gave the same advice: think good thoughts, and good things will follow. The villagers began to understand the power of her words, and their lives slowly became brighter. They loved and respected Amma even more for the hope and happiness she brought into their lives.